Number 1. The Mine. I once had the very unfortunate luck to be caught out in a storm while I was out exploring. Fortunately for me, I was quite familiar with the area. I had not gone blindly out into the wilderness like happens a lot in these kind of stories. I like to explore old mines, and I was out that day looking for a particular mine. Early in the morning, when I was driving into the area, I noticed that it looked like it was going to rain. And that was okay, but not totally ideal. Mines can very often attract water and get very wet during the rain. That makes them very difficult, if not impossible, to explore safely. However, I was going to an area with several mines that I wanted to take a look at. So I thought if I beat the rain, I could get a couple of hours of them done before things got bad. I was having what was a pretty good day for a while. I was able to check out quite a few mines with no problem. Although it looked constantly like the rain would come bearing down on me at any minute, it stayed at bay. But it was as I was nearing another mine that things began to change a bit. Though it had been cloudy all day, there really hadn't been any thunder or lightning or anything. However, that changed suddenly, when an enormous lightning bolt flashed across the sky. The thunder crash that followed it was deafening. I assumed that with the thunder coming, that the rain would be coming shortly after. I guess I had no real reason to be thinking that way, but it was what was in my mind. I almost considered skipping the mine and heading back to my car. However, my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to go ahead and check out the mine. If I got a little wet on my way back to the car, well, it would be worth it. Well, it began to rain just a little bit, right before I got to the mine. Fortunately, though, the mine was completely dry, so I would have some time to explore it before things got bad, if they ever got bad at all. I did make it to the mine just in time, too, because the rain started falling really heavy at that point. The storm just got fierce as hell, too. The thunder and lightning was more constant than in any storm I could ever remember. I went pretty deep into the mine. It didn't seem like the mine was getting much water runoff from the storm, and that was a good thing. It also meant that if I continued, I could actually wait out the storm in the mine. I had gotten deep enough that I couldn't see the portal anymore. After a while being down there, I decided there wasn't much else to see, and began heading back. And that was when I was surprised to hear voices carrying down the mine. They were coming from the direction to the portal, which meant that someone else had decided to seek shelter in the mine. I didn't think much of this at first. There was nothing wrong with a couple more people in the mine. But as I listened more to what they were talking about, I actually began to get very afraid. There were at least 3 distinct voices talking, and what got me was that one of them was suggesting they just drop something off in the mine. The other 2 insisted this was a bad idea, and they should drop it off where they normally do. This mine was not far enough away, and would likely attract explorers. It was during the course of the talk that I realized what was going on. This was a group of criminals, and they were discussing disposing of what seemed to be described as a human body. When I realized this, I felt my insides go cold. But this wasn't as scared as I was when I heard another suggest they just take the body deep enough into the mine, and maybe it would be far enough back that explorers wouldn't go so deep. I did my best not to react, but deeply hoped they would not plan on doing such a thing. If I was right and they were hiding a body, there was little that could stop them from killing me if they found me and knew I had overheard them. Part of me told myself to run back deeper into the mine, while another told me to just sit there and keep listening, quietly. While I could hear them, I would at least be able to know what they were planning on doing. They decided to see how long the storm was going to last before they decided what to do. They didn't want to be out there all day, so if the storm did last way too long, they would leave it in this mine. Of course, the only thing I could think about was the storm ending as soon as possible. I didn't know how heavy it was still raining due to being so deep in the mine, and I couldn't see the portal anymore. But it was torture sitting there, listening to these men, and wondering when the storm was going to end. I didn't know exactly how long I was in the mine waiting. I didn't dare turn the light on my watch on to see. Even if they wouldn't be able to see the watch, I didn't care. I would not take the chance. All I could do was try to remain still and wait. And eventually, the storm must have ended. I heard the men talking more, and they decided to leave the cave. But even after they left, though, I remained still for a while. I not only had to be sure that they were out of the cave, but I had to be sure that they had time to get far enough away that I wouldn't chance running into them. Still, I had no idea how long I waited. But when I finally decided enough time had passed, I began making my way back to the portal. Even though it seemed like a long time since the men had left, I wasn't planning on taking any chances. Upon leaving the mine, I was apprehensive. I figured I would be going in the opposite direction of the men, since they were trying to get further into the wilderness, and I would be headed back toward my vehicle. However, there really was no way for me to know where they were going, really, and I had no idea if I would run into them. I was fortunate to not run into anyone. I got back to my truck, and I left that area, and I never went back. I still explore mines, but I find them in other areas now. Number 2. The Appearance. When I was a child, I was deathly afraid of thunderstorms, and I always got some crap about it from the other kids in school. When it was storming in school, I would visibly react in such a way that set up people making fun of me. The one who would make fun of me the most was a guy named Joey, who was a schoolyard bully anyway. But he would mock me, call me names, and push me. There were times when I would try to get away from him, and he would physically restrain me, push me to the ground, and worse. He was a pretty despicable person. Unfortunately, though, I only had to deal with him at school. When I was home, I was able to go into my room when there was a storm and just be there. I had brothers, but they never gave me a hard time about it. Still, that didn't keep me from being afraid when the storm was going on. I remember this night. My family was in bed. My parents always went to bed early because they got up to go to work before us kids got up to go to school. There had been a storm moving in all day, and this kept me from being able to fall asleep. As I lay in bed, the house slowly got darker as everyone else went to bed in their rooms. After a while, I finally felt like I was all alone in the house, because I was sure I was the only one awake. I never asked for a nightlight or anything like that. I felt that although my parents would have gotten me one, I would have felt like I failed them or something by not trying to be brave. I was awake long enough, and my eyes did get pretty adjusted to the dark. However, it was still hard to see anything. The lightning flashes gave me brief moments of visibility, followed by darkness, as my eyes had to work to get adjusted to the dark again. During one flash of lightning, something caught my eye. I could have sworn I saw the door to my closet move just a little. I tried to dismiss it, because seriously, it was just 1 second that I was able to see. It seemed unlikely I would be able to really detect movement in that amount of time. I watched the door. I kept waiting for another movement or something to show me something that caused me to confirm or dismiss what I saw. And there was finally After what seemed like several long moments, another flash of lightning. Once again, I thought I saw the door move a little, and this time I could have sworn that the door was sitting further open than it had been before. I shuddered, really worried, but I really decided it was just my fear making me think that this was going on. So I decided to face my fear. "There's no one there, is there?" I asked. It seemed like a long wait. There was no response. I almost half expected someone to say, "No," like in a cheesy movie. In fact, in spite of myself, that made me smile a tiny bit. The lightning struck again, and the moment that it did, my closet door slammed open. I saw a figure come out of my closet. However, my eyes needed time to readjust, so all I could see was a shadowy figure coming towards me. It grabbed me by both arms, and then pushed me hard against my bed. Some voice I couldn't recognize, that was dark and scary, made some growling comments that I couldn't make out. With my eyes shut, I screamed for my parents. I felt the figure let go of me, and I heard some noises in the room. Within moments, my lights were turned on by my parents, who came to check on me. My dad immediately noticed that my bedroom window was wide open, and that the screen was removed. All I could figure is that someone had removed the screen, and that had given them access to my bedroom, in and out. I never knew who was exactly in my room, but I had always expected it to be Joey. He always made fun of me, but he made some comments that I'm sure he thought were coy about the previous night's storm. Plus, he was just the kind of sociopath that would try and pull something off like that. He was the demented jackass who ended up getting expelled and was in prison by the time he was 18. Number 3. Into the woods. It was a dark and stormy night. Lightning flashed. I screamed. Okay, that's just me being silly. I always wanted to do that. But I did have a very scary occurrence due to being in a thunderstorm once. So I thought I would share it because it really is different than the ones that we normally hear. Like a lot of people nowadays, I enjoy exploring things. I don't do urban exploring yet, although I would probably like to in the future. At the moment, I do rural exploring. And I live in an area in which it is perfect to do that. I live out in the Rocky Mountains, so as anyone who has ever been there can tell you, there is more rural territory than you can explore, than you can imagine. This particular event happened when I was taking a couple-day hike. I checked the weather over and over again to make sure it would hold up. But of course, anyone who has ever been to a weather website knows that they mess up all the time. The first day was warm and beautiful. The sky was blue and amazing. It was a great-looking day. The following morning was fine too. But then, around noon, I began to notice it. I began to see those black clouds moving in, and green clouds moving in. And they weren't just dark, they were the darkest clouds I had ever seen in my life. And then I saw them, from far off in the sky. But they came rolling in quickly, and like the darkest blanket you have ever seen, they covered the entire sky. It was barely noon, and they succeeded in becoming so dark and opaque that it quickly became nighttime during the day. I wasn't readily prepared for such weather. The lightning and thunder began right when the clouds were rolling in, and there were loud cracks of thunder, and the fiercest yet most beautiful, I have to admit, display of lightning that I had ever seen in my life. Some thunderbolts branched out over and over in these miraculously beautiful yet terrifying displays of nature, and the thunder was like someone firing a shotgun off right beside me. I thought about putting up my tent for shelter, but the winds were so fierce, I was not sure I would be able to do that. It would probably blow away before I even staked it into the ground, if not afterward. I really only had one option. I had to keep looking around and hoping I would find some sort of shelter. There were a lot of mines and caves in this area. I was hoping I'd be able to find one of them. It was getting really bad outside, but it hadn't begun raining yet. That was the one thing that I felt protected me from truly being in a bad situation. I was grateful, so I kept searching around trying to find anything at all. I had a feeling that once the rain began coming down, it was going to come down hard, not only soaking me, but stinging me as it hit me. I lucked out. Although I didn't find a cave or a mine, I did find something that I hadn't expected. I found an old, small, abandoned cabin. Well, I assumed it was abandoned, of course. And it was, at least for that day. So I took shelter in the cabin. When I was in that house, I found a book, bound in human skin, and written in blood. Okay, I'm kidding again. I always wanted to do that too. Seriously, it wasn't a bad little place. It had some really old furniture in it still. It almost looked like somebody could still have been using it, but I wasn't sure. Anyway, no one was there, and when the hard rain began finally falling from the sky, I learned that the roof was fine and not leaking. I really felt like I had lucked out. When the rain began falling, I realized that I had really lucked out. The rain was pouring down hard. I would have been soaked in seconds, and it would have been dreadful. But it was still dark outside, except when the lightning brightened it up. And that is when it happened. The loudest explosion I'd ever heard. Outside the window I looked and saw this blinding orange light. It was only a second before the side of the cabin crumbled in the orange fire. And all I could figure is that a bolt of lightning must have hit either a tree or the cabin or both. But I only had a couple seconds to even think about it, as the force of the explosion actually knocked me across the room where I hit my head. I was worried. Very worried. I hit my head really hard and felt like I was about to pass out. I had to get out of the cabin before I died in the fire. But when I tried to get up, I fell over, and then everything was black, right after I realized I would be caught in the fire. I awoke a short time later, quickly remembering the fire. However, when I looked across the room, there was no fire. I squinted my eyes and thought about it for a moment. The rain was still pouring, as it had been when it first began falling. Although that side of the cabin was destroyed, the rain must have put out the fire before it could get much further across the cabin. I actually was fine and reasonably dry. The cabin had another few small rooms, so I went into one of them to relax. I guess some people think that maybe I should have left in case there was another strike, but I didn't. I wasn't going to go out in a storm that fierce for anything. The storm carried on all night. It was terrible, and by noon the next day, I was able to leave that area and thank my lucky stars that I hadn't been on that side of the cabin when that explosion happened. I probably would be dead if I had been. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button below and the bell, or wait for the icon of Ichigo the cat that appears at the end of the closing. Leave me a comment to let me know what you thought of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. But most important, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet. and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.